Hey everybody, welcome back to the Real Estate Success Podcast. I am Jim Ingersoll and I've got an exciting show today that you're going to absolutely love because we're going to talk through all things about success with a very special guest of mine. We're going to talk about routines, mindset, a little bit of masterminding, and all kinds of stuff with Blaine Oelkers, who is the Chief Results Officer that you're going to get to know today, and you're going to absolutely love him. Blaine and I met through Freedom Founders with David Phelps, and of course Blaine just published a book also, which we'll be covering. But I want to start with this. This is in Blaine's book. If you think you are beaten, you are. If you dare not, you don't. If you like to win but you think you can't, it's almost certain you won't. If you think you'll lose, you're lost, for out of this world we find. Success begins with a fellow's will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you are outclassed, you are. You've got to think high to rise. You've got to be sure of yourself before you can ever win a prize. Life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster man, but soon or late, the man who wins is the man who thinks he can. And with that, I want to welcome you today, Blaine. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, Jim. Thank you so much for having me on. Honored to be here and talk to people about my favorite subject, which really is the mind and getting results. So I'm happy to be here.
It's wonderful to have you on. I have never started a show this way, but I saw one with Jocko Willink, and of course he wrote Extreme Leadership. And I saw he started a podcast recently with a poem, and I saw that and I thought, boy, that is perfect for us. It all starts up here, doesn't it, with mindset?
It does. I have this little saying that I got from the book Think and Grow Rich, which we'll talk about today. You know, what you think about, you bring about. And it really does come down to almost like, you make it up and then you make it happen, right? I like to say, you make it up and then you make it happen. It really is. Don't overcomplicate it, because it really is, what you think about, your thoughts. Now, and controlling those thoughts, that's not always easy. But once you can get control of your thoughts and direct them constantly towards what you really, really want and have a real true desire for, you can bring that stuff about in the physical world. So it's kind of exciting.
So congratulations on your book. Those of you guys in iTunes can't see this, but if you're in YouTube, you can. Think and Grow Rich, the book study edition, by Napoleon Hill and Blaine Oelkers. So congratulations. It's a great book. I highly recommend it. And let's go back a little bit in time. Like, what is your history with Think and Grow Rich? I know you weren't around like when Carnegie and all these people, Edison were around, but it did make an impact on you as it did me. What was your story with this book?
So I'm not 100 years old yet, but hope to get there. For me, I was extremely fortunate and probably lucky that I found this book, Think and Grow Rich, when I was in college. So I was in college at Purdue, 1982, and I see this little ad for an audio tape from this company called Success Motivation International, out of Waco, Texas. I think they're still there. And I sent away for this little audio recording, which was just a little bit of a teaser about Think and Grow Rich. And I thought, I should read that book. So I read the book in college, and I still have my little paperback version. It's kind of in tatters now, but I still have that version of the book. And I read that book, and what happened was I realized this concept of WYTAYBA, what you think about, you bring about. And I realized that if I directed my thoughts, that would direct my emotions and my efforts and make an action plan, but I could direct my thoughts and I could turn them into a physical reality. And it's not as hard as people think, right? All day long, you're taking thoughts and you're turning it into reality. But Think and Grow Rich gave me a system to do it on a bigger level, right? So you have a thought that you're thirsty. Well, then you go have a drink of water. You have a thought, you see a commercial and you want to see a new movie, right? So you have this thought, I want to see this movie. Then you go about making that thought a reality. Well, you can do that with bigger and bigger things. And Think and Grow Rich taught me how to do that. And I was very excited. And I had a lot of success coming out of college. I worked for Hewlett Packard, and then I went on to become a franchisee with Domino's Pizza and start some other consulting companies. And when I got to a certain level of success, that I went out and I purchased one of the first 5,000 copies of Think and Grow Rich. So there's been about, they say there's 100 million copies out there in print right now. I'm not sure if it's that many, but it's tens of millions. And so I bought this original version and I opened it up. And I looked at the first page and I go, I've never read that. And I had read the book by that time 10 or 15 times. I've read the book 60 times now. But I said, I've never read that. And I go, wait a second. And I went and I got my other copy. And sure enough, that first page was different. And so was the second page. And then I went on to find a bunch of things that were different. And it turns out that there were some lost instructional pages in the original version. And in 1960, Napoleon Hill kind of updated the book a little bit and changed it. So most people have read the wrong version. That was one of the reasons why I decided to create this book study edition. But what I found was those first 2 pages, those personal instructions from Napoleon Hill, they made all the difference. And my business at that time was worth about $300,000, and I really wanted to be $1 million business owner. And within 5 months of discovering what was on those 2 pages, and I'll share with the group what was on those pages, but in discovering that, within 5 months, my business went from being worth $300,000 to being worth $1 million. I got this big trophy, and I was put into this $1 million club, and it was fantastic. And what made the difference were 2 things. These 2 pages. The first page said, and actually, you can, if you want to know if you have the right version of the book, when you open it up, the very first thing should say, "What do you want most?" And so what Napoleon Hill said in that first page is, he said, you got to decide, laser focus, super high desire, what do you really want most? And before you read the book, figure out what you want most, because the book is like a textbook, about how to get that thing that you want most. So you got to get, you have to make that clarifying decision about what you really want most out of life. That was step 1. And then step 2, the second lost page, told you how to read the book. There's a very specific way that you read no more than 1 chapter a day, and you read it in a group and you discuss it with other people. Now, you talked about this in the beginning, the mastermind concept. There's so much that comes from interfacing and playing off of the minds of other people. That makes a big difference. So you have to read the book with other people and talk about it, and talk about what I call your bring about statement, the thing you're bringing about, with other people. And so what happened in those 5 months is I immediately started a book club. And I started reading the book with other people. And I did 5 book clubs in a row. You read the book within a 30-day period. And within that period, because of my association with someone in one of those groups, a method for me to jump my business that much came about. And I knew right when it came about, I was so focused. I'm like, that's it. That's what I've been waiting for. And I just threw everything behind that and made it happen. So those 2 things, one is deciding laser focus what you want. And then number 2, reading the book, taking your time reading the book, digesting the book, but doing it with other people. And, if you have 10 ideas on how to flip a house and I've got 10 ideas, if we come together, it's not just going to be 10 plus 10 equals 20, because of your 10 ideas, I'll think of 10 other ones, and it might be 30, 40, 50 ideas, right? So that third mind, that third mind is created anytime people kind of get together and come together. And that's what Napoleon Hill called the mastermind. He's got a whole chapter in the book about it. But for me, I love that book. I've read it over 60 times. And so what I did is I made a guidebook. I wrote a guidebook a number of years ago, and I took that guidebook, put it in the front of the book. Then I took the original version, the one that changed my life. I put that in the book. But then at the beginning and the end of each chapter, I took what I learned from doing all those book studies and I put that into the book as well. So the book is like a guidebook. It's the original version. And then it's also this chapter by chapter book study, which you could do on your own and you can fill in the sentences and all that. But it's a much richer experience if you do it with other people.
Wow, that was awesome. So you touched on a lot of things, and I'm going to circle back to what do you want. But Jim Rohn said you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. David Phelps and I take that and we extend it to your network. We say your network equals your net worth, of course. And then you talked about the power of you doing group studies, and some of the people you're doing group studies with help skyrocket your business from a mastermind perspective. But, you start off by saying, what do you want most? And a lot of people struggle with that. And you say, is it money? Is it fame? Is it power? Is it contentment, personality, peace of mind, happiness, impact? What is it you want most? And do you have any tips and pointers on, like, all of those things most of those things are really good. Most people want a little bit more money, maybe so they can help others or for their legacy. And a lot of people want contentment. They want peace. They want joy. They want peace of mind. They want happiness. Like, how do you get down to that laser focus? Like, what is the number one thing that I really need to focus on?
Good point. And I really, I like what you teach about relational capital, right? That a lot of people think about, financial capital and maybe even how smart they are, intellectual capital, but you focus on relational capital. And there's such a power in the people you know. And Jim Rohn, he actually is my favorite, my mentor, the guy that kind of got me through all the tough times in my life. Anyway, so I love Jim Rohn. And but this idea of what do you want most? And you have to, I call it a clarifying decision. When you finally make a decision about what it is you really, really want. Now, this can come about from a couple of different things. One, it could come about from a emotional experience, hitting rock bottom or something really traumatic happens. For me, I came home from a business trip. My son was 1 year old, and he was giving me the cold shoulder, like he didn't know who I was. And my wife, Beth, she goes, "Yeah, Bo, he's giving you the cold shoulder. He doesn't remember you because you've been gone for so long." And it was just 3 days. It was a business trip. But that night, emotionally, that hit me hard. And then I realized, wait a second, I used to come home from school to an empty house. Both my parents worked. And so sometimes my brother was there with me, sometimes he wasn't. And I realized that night, and I made this clarifying decision, I'm going to work from home. I am going to do whatever it takes to work from home. It took me a year, but that was about 24 years ago, and I've worked from home ever since, and I was able to coach everything and be at all the stuff. But anyway, making that clarifying decision. So sometimes it's an emotional event like that. There are some exercises that you can do to try to help you think about, what it is you want most, right? One of my favorite is your 100th birthday party, right? So envision that you're attending your 100th birthday party, right? And all your friends are there, friends from your family's there, your friends, the community, business partners, everybody's there. And what are they saying about you? And what have you accomplished, right? And what are those things that really matter at that 100th birthday party? And a lot of times, we do want a certain level of business success, but typically people just, they want to be remembered for helping a certain category of people do a certain thing. And the reason I know that is because there's at workshops, I lead this other exercise, which I like, called the Powerball Test. And so everyone's heard of the Powerball lottery. Typically it's hundreds of millions of dollars. And we have this exercise where you won the Powerball. Bam, you won it. It's $500 million. Okay, you got to pay taxes. You still got a couple $100 million left. And then you spend money like crazy. You buy people a house. You buy Jim a new car. All your friends, family. You do all that. You travel the world. You do all that stuff. You celebrate, and it's a year later. Now you're still sitting on $100 million in the bank. It's a year later. You've done the travel, bought all the toys, all that's done. What do you get up and do then, right? You've got unlimited resources. What do you do then? And it's interesting that workshop after workshop after workshop, people end up saying, I would help people, somebody, I would help somebody do something. It's always about how can they help somebody do something, right? So for me, I'm going to help people take control of their lives by taking control of themselves. That's what I do. That's why God put me here. So you get connected to that divine purpose for your life when you look at the Powerball, but 1 year later. And then the third exercise that we do a lot is more for the business, and that is that Forbes magazine is writing an article about Jim, about the Deal Makers Boot Camp. It's 1 year out, or it's 2 or 3 years or 5 years, whatever period you want. But they're writing an article in Forbes magazine. Big Jim, Deal Maker Boot Camp. What is the title or the headline? What is the headline for that article? That's the first thing to think about. And it could be about your growth. It could be about something about that business, something it did. What's the headline? That's where you start. And then if you have time, after you've come up with the headline, you go ahead and you write that article. And you write the details about the growth or what it did or the impact it had or what it had. And so sometimes that forward-thinking, Forbes magazine article is a good way to try to start to hone in on what are those things that really, really do matter most.
And I hope all of our success listeners right now are thinking, wow, what do I want at my 100th birthday party? What if I won the Powerball, and what if Forbes was going to write this magazine article. I think it's great. It makes you think forward a ways to what really matters. And, some of what you said reminds me of some of the things I've had discussions with a guy named Aaron Walker with. I don't know if you know Aaron out in Nashville, but he talks about like, okay, so you've achieved all these great things. You've got to have purpose, and you don't want to, part of your backstory brought me back to, I remember him saying like, you don't want to work so hard on your business that you come home and nobody remembers your name, or nobody wants to see you when you walk in that door. There's so much more to life than just building your bank account, building your wealth. And this is a real estate podcast, but there's a lot more to life than that. I always say, even Judas wanted to make it. And so he took some silver, he turned Jesus over, and it didn't end well for Judas. He ended up committing suicide. So there's more to life than wealth, bank accounts, assets, all the things that we talk about a lot. You got to decide like deep down in, what is it that makes you happy? And I agree with you. A lot of times at the end, it comes back to like gratitude. How can I help somebody? What impact can I leave? What do other people need help with that you can do in private? Nobody ever knows about what you did to help somebody. So I think it's really nice that you touched on those topics. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's, life isn't always easy, right? So it can be hard, and there are certain, almost like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You do need to make a certain amount of income, to fit whatever your current, your lifestyle is. So you've got to do that. And what I like about what you do, Jim, and the Dealmakers Bootcamp and real estate is you can create some level of passive income that will allow you the freedom to go out and do these things that you really want to do and to leave a legacy, right? You want to, at Freedom Founders, they talk about cut the burn rate, but you do want to get your expenses as low as possible so that you can get free so you can start to do that stuff, right? But it's hard for people too. If you're struggling right now and, you've got to start there. You've got to start in what I think is building a business, building some type of passive income that can set you free. And then you're right. In the end, when we do all the studies and when we talk to people that are aging, the only thing they really want is memorable moments with the people they love. That's it. That's like, in the end, that's what life all adds up. You can't take any of this stuff with you, but you can leave an impact. And what's interesting, even like this podcast today, you're creating something that will help people, not only people that are listening right now, but someone's going to listen to this podcast a year from now and get something out of it. Someone 10 years from now, somebody not yet born. There is somebody who's not even born yet, because you're putting this on the internet. They could listen to this podcast and receive value from it. You could touch the lives of people not even yet born because you're putting this together. So well done. And I think you're kind of creating part of your legacy with all these podcasts.
Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about masterminding. And I heard, by the way, I want to invite all of our listeners to go to your webpage first, because it's really important. Go to it's BlaineTEDx.com, correct?
Yeah. So BlaineTEDx.com is about a little over a year ago, I was able to do a TEDx talk, and that was one of my I don't know, it was kind of a big bucket item list for me. And so there I have a talk where I talk about WYTAYBA and what you think about, you bring about. And so I talk about that, and I get it. I'm not a real emotional guy, but the TED people are like said, hey, you got to share some emotional stories. So I do share kind of a private story about my dad. He passed away on the same day that my son was born. So anyway, I share that story, but I provide that to you, give you a transcript of that, and then open you to a lot of the other things that I do, which is primarily chief results officer stuff, right? So I kind of want to be your chief results officer and help you get more stuff done. That's what I think my purpose on the planet is. So
go to BlaineTEDx.com. You're going to love the TEDx. By the way, there's great stories about running red lights, the Bonnie and Clyde, a whole lot of stuff in there. So it will engage you, and you're going to want to go follow up with that. And I'll put a link on my show notes for that as well, Blaine. You mentioned a few minutes ago about life getting tough, and people look at you and others that are successful, and they just think, they just snapped their fingers and had success, and it's never that way. It's never that way for any entrepreneur that's successful. There's always things that go great, and then there's challenges and there's obstacles and stuff to get around. And one of the beauties about Think and Grow Rich is during our economic recession, life was tough for everybody for a period of time. So I committed to reading the book, I think every 2 months for over a year. And just getting that into my mind and thinking about what I wanted to focus on during our economic reset and recession really helped. And my wife, Cheryl, was great about it as well. And she wouldn't necessarily read it, but we would also listen to it on audio while we're driving. And it really did help us both. Why is this book so powerful on creating the right mindset to focus on the right things?
Yeah, it has a lot of, there's a lot of things going for this book. Now, this book was actually a little bit, it came from some other works that Napoleon Hill did. And he was commissioned by Andrew Carnegie to kind of interview the top business people around the turn of the century and figure out what is the secret to success. And so he put that in. There's something called the Law of Success, which is this much bigger, maybe it's 2 or 3 times the size of Think and Grow Rich. But Think and Grow Rich came from that. But the power of Think and Grow Rich comes from that it's historical stories of real people who are overcoming those things. And as you read through these stories of people overcoming, part of it is you see yourself in the story and you begin to relate to it. But it has a very high level of vibration or energy around, you realizing the control you have and getting you into to take some action, right? What you think about, you bring it about. You've got to take some action. But it's an inspiring book, and it's an inspiring collection of stories of people that, did beat the odds, that did get focused, that did, I would say the 3 C's of success, clarity, create a plan, and carry it out, right? Clarity, create a plan, carry it out. And it inspires you to go do that. And it is something that can help you through the tough times. And you hit on this thing that all entrepreneurs have, and it's called head trash. So we all have some level of head trash, and we want to keep it to a minimum, but life can beat you down. A recession can really beat you down, or, some business partner leaving you. There's all kinds of things that can really tear you down. And so what do you do? To get out of that. And one of the things you did is you hit on this key thing. I like to say, my saying is the solution to pollution is dilution, right? So the solution to pollution is dilution, and you have to dilute all the negative, the naysayers, the bad things that are physically happening in the economy, all those things. You've got to dilute that, with the positive stuff. And so for me, that's why I've read the book, over 60 times, and I'm a different person every time I read it. So I'm at a different point. I've got a different bring about statement. So it is kind of new and refreshing, every time I read it. But for me, during my darker times in business and things like that, I relied on Think and Grow Rich, and oddly enough, Jim Rohn, he has a series called The Power of Ambition. And I listened to that thing 50 times to get through a rough spot where I had a business partner, and we were 50-50, which I will never do again. I learned my lesson from that, but it was kind of a bad business divorce that happened there. And I'd rather be the 49% and know where I stand, or the 51% and know that I've got the control. And so all my business relationships past that have always been a 51-49. So anyway, but I learned a lot from that. But during the tough times, realize that the solution to pollution is dilution, and find those good things. Find the people that are going to speak life. Today we have podcasts like this one. So many great resources to fill your head with good stuff, dilute it out, and you're going to notice a turnaround. And then what happens is you start to feel a little better. Then you start to take a little action, and then that turns into more action, and then you see some light. So you follow the light, and it gets brighter, and then kind of before you know it, you're back up again. Now you get too far on top, life will knock you down again. So put some aside, put some money aside, put resources aside. At first we put 3 months aside, then we had a year's worth of living expenses on the side, and take care of yourself, build on that, build some momentum, but realize that, life's going to be tough, and you need a place to go. And Think and Grow Rich can be one of those places.
So let's just conclude with this last section on masterminding. In David Phelps' podcast, you talked about the $10,000 hour. Can you go into that with my listeners a little bit, and the power of live events, being with the right people in the right room with the right people that are going to help you, people that are going to help you and build this mastermind concept of why it's so important?
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about a mastermind group, and there's a whole chapter in Think and Grow Rich about it. And he says it's when two or more people come together in a spirit of harmony for some greater purpose. Now that could be their business, and you could spend equal time on both your businesses, but it's people coming together in a spirit of harmony. Typically, it's peers, people typically near at the same level. But when you come together, right, you create this kind of special place where it's a safe haven for you, right? It's a safe haven for you to speak freely. Typically, mastermind groups are not family and friends, right? Typically, mastermind groups are collections of other people, let's say business owners in this case, right? And so we talked earlier that when two or more minds come together, there's this third mind that's more powerful than the individual minds, and by magnitude of maybe 2, 3, 5, or 10. So you get this effect. It helps you to gain clarity. Mastermind groups helps you to avoid blind spots. There is this idea of this kind of collective collaboration. And the big thing that happens at masterminds typically is not that you just get some good new idea. It's that you actually innovate, and you find some kind of a bigger breakthrough idea. So there's a lot of power. There's a lot of power, in that. The mastermind groups too, I think, also help you serve because you're helping other people. So you're lifted up by being able to help other people. And I think that I like that it fosters action and accountability, right? People in mastermind groups typically aren't going to take your excuses, which is great. And there's a sense of this unlimited amount of ideas, right? So I feel like when I'm in a group of creative people, or even if we're not that creative, but we start throwing out ideas, that idea leads to another. So I'm never, in a mastermind setting, I'm never at a loss for possibility. And that possibility and hope is a lot of times what people need to kind of turn a corner. So anything else on mastermind groups?
At the end of our last live event that I did, I had Alex Lugavoy was his name, and he said he walked away with 3 different $1 million ideas from spending 3 days in the right group, in the right room. And that really is powerful to walk away with that. If he hadn't committed to do that and made a decision to do that and get into the right room with the right people, he wouldn't have had those 3 ideas. And I just want to give a shout out to David and Candace Phelps, who are friends of both of ours. And Freedom Founders is a really powerful mastermind, and it's extremely well run. I know you're associated with Freedom Founders and working with David as well. What do you think, like the magic sauce that creates that right environment for people to walk away with great results from that mastermind?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is kind of how a mastermind is founded, and what is the heart space, and what is the reason why it's created. And David and Candace, and I think you too, Jim, are about helping people, right? And about you discovered something, and you wanted to share it with other people. Now you and David both could have just go off and do your own thing and just do real estate and never talk to anybody. But you decided to share it with other people. So I think from the seed from which the mastermind starts is key, and then remaining true to that seed, whatever it is. So I think that's part one. But then part two is the magic happens by bringing other people together. So the key there is the centurion at the door, letting only the right people into that space is really key. And so there are times where you'll have a mastermind group, someone will come and they just don't fit in. You got to get that person out quickly. So having that harmonious group of peers, and when you have the right people in the room, what happens is over the months and years, that group begins to just support itself. You almost don't even need that much content because those people are out doing whatever the thing it is. Let's say it's real estate. They're doing so much real estate out in the field, and they're bringing those real experiences back into the room, that the room begins to be the power in itself, which is really fun to watch and fun to kind of orchestrate and kind of curate that knowledge from the room and get people sharing and going back and forth. And a lot of people love the small smaller table masterminds. You're sitting at a table with 8 people and you're able to share, confidentially about what you're going through. And it could be a celebration. So you share with other people on something you did and how you did it, or it could be a challenge or an obstacle. I love the fact that you can bring any obstacle you're having to a mastermind group and they will solve it. They will give you ideas on how to get through that. And a lot of times they've been through it in one way or another. So it's really, I don't know, it's just very heartwarming to see that kind of exchange happen. And then what happens is everybody leaves, at a much higher level and kind of almost vibrating at a higher level. It's pretty cool.
Love it. Thank you for that. Here's your book. Everybody needs to go get a copy of this. Think and Grow Rich is a great book. It can change your life. But what I love about what Blaine did here is the call to actions at the end of every chapter, the study guide. And it's going to really, if you want to make an impact on your 2019, get this, read it, do the exercises at the end. Go to BlaineTEDx.com, BLAINE, TEDx.com. And watch that, and you're going to learn about Bonnie and Clyde and some special emotional moments and running red lights and all kinds of a lot of things. Blaine, I want to really say thank you so much for being my guest today. I love talking about Think and Grow Rich. And the impact it's made on my life has been significant. It's one of the books books can change people's lives. And if any of our listeners right now are thinking that you can't read, or have never really read, then think again. It's worthwhile. Just start spending a few pages every day or one chapter a day in this book. It's an easy read and it will make an impact. Blaine, thank you so much for being my guest today.
All right. Thank you so much, Jim. Honored to be here and wish everybody the best. Take control and make it a great day.
All right. Thanks so much. And we'll talk again soon, Blaine. Thank you.
All right. Take care.